Hey guys, this video is going to cover variations of SQL injection attacks. In the last video, I talked about how you can craft specific input to a website in order to cause the database to do things that the designer did not intend. For example, if a web page shows you a list of students based on some filter criteria, such as the name of the student, then a specially crafted input could be used to convert a single select statement into multiple select statements. In this case, by putting Robert single quote semicolon, you're ending the first SQL statement, allowing you to put a second SQL statement after that. And then just for good measure, we end it with dash dash, which actually comments out anything after that, which avoids a SQL error. So in effect, we have a SQL statement that gets executed, which is what the designers intended, but then a second SQL statement embedded in our input gets executed also. Lastly, everything after the dash dash is ignored. Let's say that we have another web page though, where you're logging in, where we select star from users, where username is equal to a value and password is equal to a value. I won't actually go into why this SQL statement is a bad idea from another security standpoint, but from a SQL injection standpoint, it allows us to change the query in order to log ourselves in. So let's say, for example, we enter into the username admin quote semicolon followed by a dash dash, and then we put some random value into password. When it's parsed by PHP and put into a SQL statement, we get something that looks like this. Select star from users, where username equals admin, the query ends, and then everything after that, where it would normally check for your password, gets commented out. In effect, that means it will select star from users, where username is equal to admin, giving yourself access to whatever user has the username admin. In essence, we are bypassing the password check here. Another example, using the same query, select star from users, where username is equal to a value and password is equal to a value, could be crafted where the input is quote or 1=1 dash dash. So how does this actually look when it gets parsed by SQL? We get a SQL statement that says select star from users, where username is equal to quote quote or 1=1. What that statement does is it selects all users where the username is either blank or the value of 1 is equal to the value of 1. Well, as we know mathematically, 1 is always equal to 1, so every record in the database would be returned, and the last part would be ignored thanks to our dash dash, so it would not check the password anymore. So in essence, this would return a complete list of users from the database. And in fact, what user is probably the first user in the users table? It's probably your admin or your super user, in which case that would be the first user returned, and most code would look through this entire result set and just pull out the first user returned and attempt to use it as the currently logged in user. Next, let's look at a situation where you're changing your password. Maybe you've used an update statement in your web app that updates users, setting the password equal to a value where a specific username is set to a particular value. So in this case, it might be set password to your new password where username is equal to Robert. We can craft an input that looks like this, setting a new password, closing a quote, semicolon dash dash. Now what would happen when we enter that new password is it would update users, set password equal to, quote, the new password you've entered, and our quote semicolon would end the SQL statement, and our dash dash would comment out all the rest of the code. In this case, we would update every user in the database to have the password password. Then we could use that to log into anyone's account. Lastly, Let's say we have a very simple query that just selects items from the items table where a particular description has been specified. So in this case, we're getting the item number and the description, where description is equal to some value passed in. If we craft a specific input using the union keyword, then in this case, we can join together two SQL queries. The first would be the normal select statement that the designer of the web application intended, but then we would union together the results of that query with the results of a second select statement. So when this is parsed by SQL, we would end up with a large select statement that says select item number and description from items, where description is equal to, and we just threw in foo, unioned together with selecting the username and password from users. And then again, we use the dash dash to comment out or ignore the remainder of the query. So what that would give us is output that looks like a list of items from the database concatenated together with a list of users. They're showing their usernames and passwords. So let's try that and see what that actually looks like. So here I am in my PHP MyAdmin tool, and I've created a select statement that looks like what was generated. In this case, it's a select star from items, where description is equal to foo, and if we wanted to make it exactly like what was in the code, it would be select item number description from items, where description is equal to foo, unioned together with a second select statement. Now what happens if we run this is you see item number and description are the column titles, but in the actual values for each row, we have the username and password for every user in the database concatenated together with the only item that actually matched our search criteria. So unions are a simple way of pulling together data from another table that the designer had never intended you to access. One thing to note is the number of fields must match between their select statement and your select statement. If we only selected, say, the item number, but we selected username and password from users, we would get a SQL error, and it would not work.